Welcome to Time to Press Pause, a podcast for CEOs by CEOs. I'm your host, Ellen Williams, CEO of the Salient Strategist. And today I'm speaking with Charles Gaudet. Charles is the CEO of Predictable Profits, author of The Predictable Profits Playbook, the 7- and 8-figure CEO's Guide to Generating Consistent and Sustainable Growth, and host of the Beyond 7 Figures podcast. He received his Certificate of Leadership Development from the U.S. Army War College and has received numerous awards and recognition from publications and organizations, including Inc., Forbes, Salesforce, Success, Entrepreneur, and Fox Business. He lives in Florida with his beautiful wife, 3 adorable kidpreneurs, and 1 badass dog. Welcome, Charles, to the Time to Press Pause podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really excited to hear your story. I have a little bit of history with you. I was happy to participate in your 2024 CEO Outlook, Navigating Economic Shifts and Emerging Markets. And I got my copy, and it's fabulous and a lot of great trends. I also have a copy of your book, so I've been digging into that. Really appreciate all the great advice that you have to offer for businesses. And today, I'm looking forward to hearing your story of some point in your past where you had to press pause and maybe do a little reevaluation.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to share. It was interesting because when you first asked me to comment on pressing pause, I really had to think about which pause I was going to address, because I almost look at this as there's 3 different types of pauses. There's the short pause that happens nearly every single day, and it's probably the most important pause, the one that happens every day. And then there's that intermediate pause where you really just need to take some time off, some extended time off, and gather your thoughts and so forth. And then there's the longer term pause. And there's 3 different categories. And the first pause that I think about is, as a CEO, we've got this internal battery. And the last thing that a CEO should do is take their battery to zero. At the end of the day, you still should have some energy in your battery. At the end of the week, still have some energy in the battery, because there's a certain point in that battery where you cross that line and your ability to be creative, to make effective decisions and so forth, actually, it begins to work against you. And instead of you thinking that, I could just push it a little bit more, what ends up happening is, unbeknownst to yourself, you end up making decisions that will make your life harder. And I spoke with one particular CEO not too long ago that drove himself all the way to just zero on that battery. And the result of that was he was making decisions that were actually really bad for the company. And in a normal state of being, he knows better than to make the decisions that he made. But he was so burnt out, so drained, that he took himself down a path that was very hard to recover from. And so that pause is real easy. Sometimes the best decision you can make is to say, you know what? I'm going to push away from my desk. I'm going to go out by the pool. I'm going to lay out in the sun for 20 minutes and just breathe, or walk out, go for a walk and just breathe. And it's those moments that as your battery begins to re-energize, you can feel your brain become more clear and the level of your decisions better. It's why, for many people, they get their best ideas in the shower. That's a moment of pause. When they're just sitting there, they let their brain just sort of relax. It begins to recharge, and out of nowhere, you just start coming up with solutions and ideas. And so those pauses are incredibly important for the CEO to maintain effective decision-making. And then there's that intermediate pause. And more recently, that happened to me where my father passed away last year. And I knew that I didn't have the mental capacity to make decisions that were great on behalf of my company, my clients, my employees, and so forth. So I needed that time to just take a pause and just sit with it and think about, my life and so forth. And those intermediate pauses almost always come after a period of challenge. Now, you'll know when it's time to get back into the seat when you're able to recenter yourself. And the best way that I've found to do that is to put yourself in a place of gratitude. Like even in 2020, when stuff hit the fan and whatnot, um, things were pretty difficult, but until you could put yourself in a place of gratitude where you know that every opportunity comes with it a challenge, and every challenge comes with an opportunity, and so forth. That center emotion, the most powerful emotion that humans have, is actually gratitude. It's not love. Love is an extreme. Hatred is an extreme. What's in the center is gratitude, and that's when you're able to just finally, and when you can get there and sit in this place of gratitude, that again allows you to have that clarity of thought to be more effective in your ability to make decisions. But then there's the other side. This is when you take a much more extended pause. And usually that's because something major happened where you've reached this inflection point in your business. 2020, for depending on the industry that you're in, for most people, I mean, it was a matter of just all of a sudden they wake up one morning, their life has changed, they can't go into the office, they may have lost clients, their pipeline has dried up and whatnot. Rather than immediately just react for such a massive, massive event, that's one of those things that it's like, okay, let's stop for a minute. We're going to have to reinvent our strategy. We either have to change the message to meet the market, change the market to meet the message, change both with that, whatever that is, but it's not something you're going to rush into. That's something that you're going to say, okay, let's collect the data, let's figure things out. And those bigger pauses usually involve other people, not just yourself. And so that's sort of like the different ways that I kind of look at those pauses, but there's a common theme in that pause. And that common theme, no matter which way it is, small, medium, or big pause, it all comes down to your ability to be an effective decision maker. You and I, Ellen, are in the place that we're in right now because of our ability to make decisions. It was the decisions that we made that brought us here. Now, you might love where you're at, and that's awesome. And that's the decisions that you made that brought you there. Or maybe you're not quite as happy as you believe you should be. And that's okay too, as long as you recognize and take ownership that it was the decisions that I made, right or wrong, that brought me here. But now I have the power and the ability to redirect my decisions and make new ones that can bring me to the place that I want to go. How's that
Okay.
sound, Ellen?
Okay. So awesome. That all sounded awesome. And first of all, I am 100% in agreement. And I say it all the time. Every decision I made led me to where I am today. So to your point, if I'm happy, if I'm unhappy, it's because of the decisions I've made. And I know I've made bad decisions in the past, but today I'm pretty happy where I am. So I was able to navigate around them. I love the framework that you created on the short and the intermediate and the longer term pauses. I think that's spot on as well. And some of the other people I've spoken to have communicated the same kind of thing where their story was really long or their story was about daily pauses. But one thing that you said that I hadn't heard before, and I think it's perfect, is it's one thing to understand when it's time to press pause. It's another thing to understand when to get back into the seat.
Mm-hmm.
And you said that, and I think that has a lot of power and a lot of value, because pressing pause sometimes can be difficult, but sometimes can be like, I'm done. Like this isn't working. But then it's okay, then what do I do to make it work? Get back into the seat. I love that. Do you want to expand on that?
Sure. And thank you for that. What I found is that my company is Predictable Profits, right? That's the name of my company. And so people, when they come to me, they're expecting they're going to get strategies and systems and all this other stuff to continue growing their business and whatnot. So many of them actually find it surprising when they ask me for my most powerful strategy or my most powerful tool or whatnot. And my response is gratitude. And they're like, wait a minute. That sounds a little woo-woo and all that other fun stuff. I don't know if I
Woo
believe in it.
woo. Woo woo. Is that a technical term?
It is a technical term. But I realized, so I created my first multi-million-dollar business when I was 24, but at the same time, I was at the lowest emotional state that I had been in my life up to that point. And I ended up spending a lot of time in self-reflection. I invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in personal development. And as I started studying billionaires and centimillionaires and whatnot, I began to realize that for most of these people, they attribute their success to mindset. And so it was, well, how do I actually create a mindset that is powerful? As I looked for a powerful mindset and the commonalities, it came down to that of just gratitude. And so gratitude is important. Now, obviously, it's easy to be grateful when something wonderful happens in your life. It's like, of course, I'm super thankful for that. The hardest thing that's ever happened in my life to date is when my dad died. And I'm sitting in my office and I broke down. I'm crying, but tears are pouring down my face. I'm borderline hyperventilating. I'm a mess. But I said to myself, I'm not doing anything until I can find gratitude in the moment. Now, there's part of my brain that is saying, grateful? How can you be grateful? This is such an unfair situation. He never should have died. This is wrong. And there's no way to be grateful. You're out of your mind. Here's the one exception to the rule. But then the other part of me is like, Charlie, you've come too far to believe that you can't be grateful for this moment. Find that moment of gratitude. And so it was the longest I've ever had to be in that situation where I couldn't find the blessing. But I refused to get out of my seat until I could find the blessing in that moment. And then it dawned on me. And I'm like, you know what? Now, this is a story I told myself. We create our own stories. And my story was, you know what? Maybe dad had to do this because he wanted to work behind the scenes. He could do more help and support his family more and be there for us all more behind the scenes. And maybe he knew it was his time. Maybe he knew it was his time because he did the most he could while he was on Earth. And now it's about helping us behind the scenes. And when I came up with that, all of a sudden it was like, wait a minute, that actually sounds like my dad. That sounds like something that he would do. It really does. And then, so I hung on to that story. And then as life went on, it was interesting because so many things began to happen that I'm like, you know what? That never would have happened if he was alive. Like there's definitely things that are going on that I believe that, it is that support. And I've made decisions that have been, that I wouldn't have made if he was alive. And so I'm more grateful, not necessarily that he died, but I'm grateful that he's there and supporting me in another way, in a spiritual way, or whatever that might be. So even in those moments of gratitude, what it did is, it allowed me to be a more powerful person. Because instead of, if something bad happens, let's say, right now in today's economic environment, a lot of people are having high client turnover, pipelines are longer, taking longer for people to close. They're having a more difficult time collecting leads. And for many people, that mindset is all about almost a little bit of victimhood. It's not working. Everything that I've tried before isn't working more. And they're very much in reactive and they're very much in panic mode and whatnot. So when you're in that mode, all you're going to do is you're going to see more reasons to panic and more reasons why things aren't working. And you're going to continue to justify it. And it's going to be actually, the opportunities are going to pass you up. Then there's the other mindset, the mindset that goes, okay, So I believe that life happens for me, not to me. So why is this happening for me right now? Why could this actually be the best thing in the world that could happen to my business right now? How is it? And instead of looking at all the reasons why things are bad, it's a problem, instead now we're looking for all the opportunities that currently exist in that moment. And you begin to see things that your competitors aren't seeing.
Well, that was quite the answer to getting back in the seat. And a lot of what you said resonated with me. So first, when my mom passed back in 2005, I did have that moment of being grateful because I wasn't young. So I had my mom for a good deal of my life. My kids got to know their grandmother, and we had a really good relationship. And to touch on, the woo-woo stuff, I do have that level of spirituality. So when people were like, "I'm so sorry for your loss," I never felt like I lost her. I
Yeah.
knew my mother, and even today, when I see things that I know she would have liked, I feel her. And again, sometimes we tell ourselves these
That's okay.
things, right?
Yeah.
But I feel her, or I can hear what she would have said because I knew her for so long, and I knew her mannerisms, and I knew her the way she spoke. So I was grateful for having that longevity with my mother,
Right.
and I carry her forward. So that really resonated. And also the mindset, I don't know who coined the phrase, but if you ask better questions you get better answers, right? So if you
Yes.
keep asking those questions, and to your point, switch them from, oh my gosh, what are we going to do, to how can we make this better, how can we turn this to our advantage, and your brain starts thinking in that way, and starts answering those questions. I think that's a huge way to take a pause, which, 2020, we all got to pause, right? It was the mass
Right.
global pause. But then, what do you do to come out of that? What do you do during that pause that's going to make the next step better? Pulling that all together, being grateful, the positive mindset. I think that's really great path for coming out of pressing pause. What do you do
Yeah.
while you're there, and what gets you out of that? So I thank you so much for your pause framework, your pause story, and your guidance for, moving past when you need to pause so that you come out the other side, positioned for whatever you want to be positioned
Yeah.
for, right? It really gives you that time for introspection and thought, and hopefully clarity as well.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
thank you so much for being a guest. It was great. I loved everything you said.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Time to Press Pause. To learn more about Charles Gaudet, go to predictableprofits.com. To learn more about me, go to thesalientstrategist.com. And be sure to join us again wherever you listen to your podcasts.